All right, let's dive in. This time, you guys sent in some super interesting stuff about this painting called Clustering Illusions. And honestly, the more we looked into it, the more questions we had. So we're going to try to untangle this whole thing together. We've got this YouTube video that throws out some pretty wild interpretations, a detailed art analysis that breaks down all the visuals, and even some personal stories about the artist himself, Bob Camblin, who
Hmm.
kind of just vanished.
Yeah, it's like piecing together a puzzle where the pieces, they don't exactly fit the way you'd think they should.
Totally. So maybe we should start with the basics. What does this painting actually look like?
Picture a really peaceful canyon, like something you'd see on a postcard. You've got these towering rock formations, a waterfall cascading into this pool of water, and rolling hills off in the distance. Classic serene landscape stuff.
Okay, sounds pretty straightforward, but I have a feeling there's something more to it.
Oh, absolutely. Because hidden within all those rocks, like blended into the textures of the landscape, you start to see these mysterious figures and faces. It's almost like the landscape itself is hiding a secret.
Okay, no, that's what I'm talking about. The YouTube video described it as a visual tapestry that lures the viewer into a game of perception, and they even talked about like phase and human forms embedded in the landscape. It's giving me major Where's Waldo vibes.
It's playing with this phenomenon called pareidolia. Have you ever seen a face in the clouds or I don't know, a bunny rabbit in a stain on the wall?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Our brains are always trying to make sense of things, even if there's no real pattern there.
Exactly. And this painting, well, it takes that to a whole other level. The YouTube video even dives into Zen and Taoist philosophy, suggesting the painting is kind of challenging us to question how solid our perceptions really are. Kind of like how Zen Buddhism encourages us to see, the impermanence of everything.
Whoa. Okay, that's a pretty heavy concept for a landscape painting, but I can kind of see it. Like the painting is saying, hey, don't trust your eyes. There's more here than you think.
Right. And they even tie it to this idea of Wu Wei, which is a Taoist principle about effortless action,
Yeah.
about aligning with the natural flow of things.
So, how does that relate to the painting exactly?
Well, think about how those hidden figures kind of emerge from the rocks, almost organically. It's not forced or anything. It's like they were always there, just waiting to be noticed. And that effortless unfolding, it really resonates with this idea of Wu Wei.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So, we've got a landscape painting with these hidden figures, some Zen and Taoist philosophy thrown in, but it's still a work of art, right?
Absolutely. And that's where things get even more interesting. Because when you look at it through the lens of art history, you start to see connections to surrealism, especially the work of Salvador Dali.
Oh, yeah, the melting clocks guy.
Exactly. He was all about exploring the subconscious mind and finding multiple realities within a single image. He even had this method called paranoia critical, where he would, deliberately try to induce hallucinations to tap into his subconscious and create these super bizarre images.
So, are you saying clustering illusions has that same kind of mind bending effect?
In a way, yeah. Even though the style might not scream surrealism, both Dali and Camblin are inviting us to question what we're seeing, to look beyond the obvious and find those hidden layers of meaning.
Interesting. And even though the style of clustering illusions isn't exactly traditional Eastern art, you're saying the composition, the vastness of the landscape, those hidden realms,
Mhm.
it gives off that same vibe.
Exactly. It's like Camblin took inspiration from those classical Chinese landscape paintings where these huge sweeping landscapes would often hide little details and symbolic meanings, kind of like the figures in his own work. It's all about reminding us that things aren't always as simple as they seem.
So we've got Zen philosophy, surrealism, and a touch of classical Chinese art. Where does the art analysis fit into all of this?
Well, the analysis breaks the painting down into three main sections. You've got those towering rocks, the waterfall and the pool at the bottom, and the hills that fade into the distance. But it really focuses on how pareidolia is working within each of those sections.
So it's like a guided tour of all the hidden figures.
It's more than that. It's like they describe how what seems like random rock formations, well, they slowly start to reveal these shapes and figures. They talk about outlines and the textures that resemble, faces or torsos or limbs. It's as if the painting is encouraging you to actively participate in the illusion.
That's so cool, like a giant visual puzzle that you solve with your own imagination.
And it reminds us that we're always projecting our own stories and interpretations onto the world around us. Just like we name constellations or see animals in clouds, we're always finding patterns and meaning, even in random things.
It's true. I remember when I was a kid, I used to see faces in the wood grain of my bedroom door. It was kind of creepy, but also totally fascinating.
And this painting takes that to a whole new level, right? It makes you question what's real and what's created in our minds. And it's not just seeing faces in rocks. It's about understanding how we project our own stories and, well, even our own personalities onto the landscapes we inhabit.
Okay, now that is deep. It's like the painting is a mirror, showing us how we're always trying to create meaning, even if it's not really there.
Exactly. And that leads us to another fascinating part of this puzzle, the artist himself, Bob Camblin. Because, just like those hidden figures in his painting, he seems to have, well, vanished from view.
Wait, really? But he's the one who painted it, right?
He is, but his life takes a really unexpected turn, and we've got this account from his friend Earl Staley that sheds some light on the mystery.
Okay, now you got me hooked. What happened?
So it seems like Bob Camblin was a big part of the Houston art scene for a while. He was sharing studios, collaborating on projects, even had this group called the Holding Firm. But then at some point, poof, he's gone.
Gone, like disappeared without a trace.
Not completely. He moved to Oregon, then Louisiana, and basically withdrew from the art world entirely. He stopped selling his work and would even sign some pieces as Mr. Peanut or Anonymous, almost like he was trying to erase his own identity.
Wow, that is strange. What could have possibly made him do that?
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next.
Okay, so we've got this amazing painting that plays tricks on our eyes, a little bit of Zen philosophy, a touch of surrealism, and now a missing artist. This is getting good. Where do we go from here?
Well, we got to dig deeper into this whole Bob Camblin mystery. Staley described Camblin's studio as, get this, a wizard's den. Apparently, it was filled with all sorts of, curious and outrageous objects. Sounds like he's a pretty interesting guy.
That just makes his disappearance even more intriguing. Did Staley have any idea why Camblin just walked away from the art world?
He did mention that Camblin stopped selling or giving all the treasure away. Apparently, there was this small show of his work after he had a stroke to raise some funds. But after that, Staley says, we know nothing of his life or work.
It's like he purposely faded into obscurity.
It's almost like his life became its own clustering illusions, his intentions, his later work, his whole presence, all kind of obscured and hidden, just like those figures in his painting.
That's a really poetic way to put it. It's like he was living out the themes of his own art. Do you think he was trying to make some kind of statement?
It's definitely possible. Remember how he was signing some of his pieces as Mr. Peanut and Anonymous?
Yeah.
Maybe he was trying to break away from the traditional art world, like he was making a statement about identity or authorship, or even just how quickly recognition can fade away.
That actually makes a lot of sense. He was already exploring these themes of illusion and perception in his paintings, so maybe withdrawing from the art world was just another way of exploring those same ideas.
And maybe, just like his painting makes us question what we're seeing, he wanted us to question what we think we know about him, about creativity, about the connection between an artist and their work.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we've got this really cool parallel between the hidden figures in the painting and the hidden life of the artist. It's like we're experiencing pareidolia, but on a biographical level. We're trying to put together a complete picture of this guy, but we only have these little bits of information, these glimpses into his life.
It makes you wonder if the mystery around Camblin adds another layer to the artwork itself. What do you think?
For sure. It makes you think about the artist's intentions, their creative process, how much of their own journey ends up in their art, even if it's hidden.
It's like we're being asked to look past the surface, to search for those clustering illusions, not just in the painting, but in the artist's life too. We might never know why Camblin stepped away from the art world, but the mystery itself becomes part of his art, part of the whole experience. It adds this layer of depth and complexity, and it challenges us to question what we think we know, and to be okay with things not being totally clear.
This makes me want to look at the painting again, but with this new understanding. Knowing about Camblin's life, his choices, his decision to kind of disappear, it adds a whole new dimension to the experience.
Exactly. And that brings us back to this whole idea of clustering illusions, how they're not just in art, but in life. The YouTube video had a really interesting point about that. They said, the human tendency to impose patterns, such as the perceived figures, reflects our drive to construct meaning in a chaotic world.
That's true. We're always trying to make sense of things, looking for patterns and connections, even when they aren't really there. Our brains are just wired for storytelling.
And they went on to say that the painting encourages us to confront this drive, recognizing it as both a source of creativity and a potential barrier to seeing things as they truly are.
So on one hand, it's our imagination, our ability to find those patterns and create meaning that makes us human, that lets us be creative and innovative. But on the other hand, it can make us misinterpret things, see what we want to see instead of what's actually there.
That's the fine line, right?
Yeah.
How do we embrace our imaginations without getting lost in them? How do we stay open to possibilities without creating a world that only exists in our heads?
That is a really tough question. Do you think the painting offers any answers?
I think it kind of points us in the right direction. Remember those Zen principles we talked about earlier? Observing without judgment, acknowledging our perceptions without clinging to them.
Right, right. It's like the painting is encouraging us to notice our tendency to create these clustering illusions, to see things that might not actually be there. But it's not about ignoring our imaginations, it's about using them in a smart way, knowing that they can sometimes lead us astray.
Exactly. Yeah. Remember how the YouTube video ended? They said, carry this practice forward in the world around you. Notice the figures in the cliffs, the faces in the clouds, and the stories you create. Recognize them for what they are, illusions, and let them illuminate the truths you seek.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. It's like they're encouraging us to be more aware of our own pareidolia, our tendency to see patterns and meaning everywhere, and then use that awareness to better understand ourselves and the world around us.
And maybe, just maybe, by recognizing the illusions we create, we can start to see the world a little more clearly, more honestly, and appreciate the beauty of what's there and what's not.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this painting and all its different layers of meaning.
And that's the amazing thing about art, right? It invites us to keep talking about it, to explore different perspectives, to discover new things every time we encounter it.
So, what does all this mean for you? What really stands out to you in all of this?
For me, it's realizing that we're all creating our own clustering illusions all the time. We're constantly building these narratives and projecting meaning onto our experiences. And even though those stories can be powerful and help us navigate the world, they can also limit us and keep us from seeing things clearly.
That's such a great point. It's like we're all artists in a way, constantly shaping our own realities with the stories we tell ourselves.
Exactly. And that's a powerful ability, but it can also be dangerous if we're not careful. But by becoming more aware of our own clustering illusions, by understanding how we shape our own perceptions, we can start to break free from those limiting narratives and open ourselves up to new possibilities.
Okay, so we've gone from Zen philosophy to our history to the fascinating life of this artist who basically disappeared. And we've learned that this painting isn't just about a pretty landscape. It's about how we see the world, how we create meaning, and how much is hidden beneath the surface.
And how our perceptions, just like those clustering illusions, can both reveal and hide the truth.
Exactly. It's a reminder that there's always more to discover, more to question, and that our understanding of the world is always changing. But before we wrap things up, we want to leave you with one final thought to think about. So we've been on this incredible journey with clustering illusions, uncovering all these layers of meaning and connections. But now we're at the point where I think we need to turn it over to you, the listeners.
Yeah, this is where it gets really personal because it's all about how this connects to your own life,
Yeah.
your own experiences.
Exactly. This whole deep dive has been about seeing things in new ways, questioning our assumptions, and understanding how our minds shape our perceptions. But now it's your turn.
Remember that line from the YouTube video. Notice the figures in the cliffs, the faces in the clouds, and the stories you create. Recognize them for what they are, illusions, and let them illuminate the truths you seek.
It's such a powerful reminder that we're all creating these clustering illusions all the time. We're
Yeah.
constantly telling ourselves stories, finding patterns, making sense of the world in our own unique way.
Right, and it's not about saying those stories are wrong or bad. It's about becoming aware of them, recognizing that they're just one way of seeing things, and being open to other possibilities.
It's like when you look at clustering illusions, you see these hidden figures that weren't obvious at first. And in a way, that's what we're all doing in life. We're looking for those hidden figures, those deeper meanings in our own experiences.
Exactly. And sometimes those figures are beautiful and inspiring, but sometimes they might be holding us back, keeping us from seeing the bigger picture.
So the challenge is to become more aware of those clustering illusions we create, to ask ourselves, is this really true, or is this just a story I'm telling myself?
And maybe by asking those questions, by being a little more skeptical of our own perceptions, we can start to see the world more clearly and make choices that are more aligned with who we really are.
You know, it's funny, we started this deep dive talking about a painting, but we ended up exploring so much more. Zen philosophy, surrealism, the mystery of a missing artist, and ultimately, the power of our own minds to shape our reality.
It's a good reminder that art can be a doorway to all sorts of unexpected discoveries.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap things up, we want to leave you with this one thought. Think about your own life. Where do you see pareidolia at play? What stories are you telling yourself? What clustering illusions might be shaping your perceptions? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep an open mind. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.